Brian Windhorst, ESPN senior NBA writer. Wendy, thanks for joining us. I know you're busy. When did you get a heads up that there was something going on here? Let's start with Chauncey Billups. We knew about Terry Rozier, but Chauncey Billups, any heads up?
Good morning, Dan. I had no heads up, and I'm not sure Chauncey did either. I'm here in LA, and I'm staying at the same hotel as the Timberwolves. And I ran into some Timberwolves folks yesterday in the hotel, like an hour after this happened, and they had been in Portland the night before. They played against the Blazers. Some of the folks I talked to said they had talked to Chauncey. They complimented him on the way the team looked. They had a real close game, came right down to the final minute in their home opener against Minnesota. Chauncey talked about how excited he was about the team, about how good of a training camp they had. I don't think Chauncey knew it was coming either. Maybe he knew he was the subject of an investigation. That's possible. But the fact that he was going to get arrested in the wee hours, I don't think he knew it was coming. I'm not sure how much heads up the NBA had. I'm sure they knew it before I did, but I'm not sure that's how the feds operate.
What's the worst accusation pertaining to the NBA, in your opinion?
I don't think that this is a scandal that rocks the NBA to its core. I know that there are people that are going to use it to say that, and certainly their association with sports betting can be called into question, as all people associated with sports can be. ESPN's can be. There's two accusations here, and I think the poker stuff is fascinating. I mean, this is right out of a movie. You're talking about mob stuff. You're talking about cheating at poker games, rigging poker games. That was all interesting at the press conference. None of that has anything to do with the NBA. Now, there are potentially NBA people who were at these games. I'm sort of fascinated that the Justice Department seems interested in protecting the rights of people playing in illegal poker games. Like, they're worried about the victims playing illegal poker games, but that's for another day. But the Genovese crime family or whatever, I laughed out loud about 4 times at that press conference. That has nothing to do with the NBA. There's 2 different cases here. They were tied together in the announcement, and I understand why they did that. Within the case against the folks involved with the NBA, there are 2 different accusations. One is that 2 players took themselves out of games so their unders would hit. Both of them were publicly known. Jonte Porter's already pled guilty and has probably been an informant on this case. The other, Terry Rozier, was known and was investigated by the league, and he continued to play. And that's definitely something the league has to address. And I talked to the league about that, and I'll tell you in a minute what they said. That is certainly a concern. That is not something that was news. It was new that Terry Rozier got federal charges, but that was not new. So you can be upset by that, but it was something the league was already aware of. The other thing that was accused was 3 different individuals were accused of leaking information to bettors about who was going to be available in the games. One was Chauncey Billups, one was Damon Jones, and one is an indirect Orlando Magic player that was unnamed, where the Magic player told somebody who told somebody else, and they don't even indict anybody there. And that has been a soft target for the NBA, Dan, for decades. The team decides or knows when a star player or any player is going to play in the morning usually, and then doesn't reflect it on the injury report because they're worried about strategy and letting the other team know. And there's this window of hours where there's inside information available. People have exploited that for decades, and that is what Chauncey Billups and Damon Jones are being accused of. There's a problem the NBA has tried to address. They've tightened their injury reporting rules. They've fined teams for not following them, but there's still a window there that can be exploited, and that's what this is. So it's definitely serious. The NBA has got to worry about prop betting, and Adam Silver has talked about this. But this is the addressing of a problem that has existed for a long time. It's not nothing, but I don't think it's like a scandal that's rocking the league. They're going to have to change some policies, but it's mostly shocking that it ensnares a Hall of Famer like Chauncey Billups. And let's wait and see who else might get involved with the poker, because NBA guys like to play poker, and they're not all in casinos. So I'll see about that. But this is huge headlines, but I'm not sure that this is the dire scandal that it may seem if you just watch the press conference yesterday.
Talking to Brian Windhorst of ESPN, senior NBA writer. The one that stood out was Chauncey Billups letting somebody know that he was going to be resting his starters, that they were, quote, unquote, tanking. That to me is troubling because that's from a head coach. That's not a former player like Damon Jones. That's a head coach. So that's the one that's the most troubling for me.
I would agree. And I would say that in the indictment, and I'm only going by what's in the indictment, Dan, and I will tell you the indictment's about 40 pages long. I read the indictment from front to back, and I'm not sure how many people who are talking about the indictment actually read it. Okay. So in the indictment, it doesn't accuse Chauncey Billups of selling the information. It does accuse Damon Jones of selling the information. In fact, in the indictment that names Chauncey Billups, well, actually doesn't name him. It refers to him as co-conspirator 8, but then gives his resume. It practically gives his social security number. It's very clear who it is. It doesn't say that he did it for money. It doesn't say what he did it for. Now, if it comes out that he knew that this individual that he told was going to sell it to bettors, that's really bad. If he had some sort of, maybe he owed somebody money and did it as a favor, if there was some sort of return from that, then I think you're looking at something serious. If it was just Chauncey having loose lips and that loose lips leading to tens of thousands of dollars in betting winnings, that's different. The FBI does not accuse him of selling it. The FBI accuses Damon Jones of selling it. In fact, the FBI says that Damon sold information on Lakers players to multiple games, and one of the games proved to be wrong. The bettors lost the bet, and the guys wanted their money back. So it is very upsetting that Chauncey is involved in this. The league has to take serious action as it involves with their public information versus private information on player availability. But I am not going to sit here and say, oh my God, this is the end of the NBA and everything's got to be reevaluated.
Yeah, I mean, we have the headlines and they're juicy. And you're right. We don't do deep dives much anymore. If you're Adam Silver, what would be your game plan if you were advising him?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is the thing that the league is going to have to address is why Terry Rozier was investigated by the league and was allowed to keep playing. And when the feds investigated him, they ended up indicting him. The league has a little bit of egg on its face on this one. So I asked the question to the league, how'd that happen? And this is the answer that they gave me. On the record, league spokesman, Mike Bass, I'll tell you his name, but he's speaking for Adam Silver. Basically, it's that the NBA is not the Justice Department. They can't do wiretaps. They can't have witnesses roll over on each other. They can't get access to everybody's text messages. They can do investigate. They can get some access to some people's phones. They can do investigations in terms of asking people and sort of threatening them and whatever. And I even asked them, I go, well, what did you do in your investigation? They say, we're not going to say what we did because we don't want everybody to know the tactics that we use, but they certainly don't have the Justice Department. And that sounds a little upsetting, but it's also candid. The NBA saying we're not the Justice Department is a candid answer. It's not a satisfactory answer, but it's a candid answer. So now what Adam Silver is going to have to do is explain what the league can do. Okay, they can't be the Justice Department, but now it's incumbent on him. But what they can do in these types of investigations. And then here's something that's just got to be simple, Dan. I've actually talked about this for years. They've just got to be more honest with injuries. The teams cover up injuries for strategic reasons. I'm not asking them to reveal a player's exact health information and violate HIPAA laws. But if 40 people in the team organization, if 40 people went to shoot around that morning and know that the star player is not playing at 6 o'clock or at 7 o'clock, they need to tell the world that. And sometimes it is a game time decision. Sometimes the star player has to go out there and stretch out and see how his calf feels and see how his wrist feels or whatnot. Sometimes the concussion protocol isn't determined until closer to the game. So say that, but there is this soft target that the NBA has had for decades. I mean, reporters are asked to operate in that field all the time.
Yeah.
We are asked, to come on television and say whether LeBron James is playing or not, because maybe we happen to know that he went through shoot around or something like of those natures. That is something that the gamblers have tried to get that information and have gotten that information for decades. So the NBA has got to tighten that. And this investigation is probably going to force them to do it. They have tightened it some. They haven't just put their hands in their pockets. When sports betting came in, they changed their rules, but the rules haven't gone far enough. And this accusation is in the cracks that there are still people operating in.
Yeah, they got to get rid of prop bets. Especially college athletes, they should not be involved with prop bets. There's enough pressure there. I don't know are we too far down the road that if the NBA said to FanDuel, DraftKings, whoever, Vegas, no more prop bets, do they have any authority to do that?
That's not my end of the business. I couldn't tell you. I would say, though, that I've not seen gambling walk back in one iota. Maybe at some point it will have to be just for society, but I've only seen it go one way. And I think you're right. I think the people that are most susceptible to being compromised are people who have nothing to lose. Okay. A lot of NBA players have a lot to lose, okay? Even Jonte Porter, who was holding on to the NBA by the skin of his teeth, had a lot to lose. College players, there are certain college players who know their careers are not going anywhere, who don't have anything to lose. And so that's college's soft spot. Before I covered the NBA, I covered the Mid-American Conference, okay? There's a ton of players in that conference whose careers are going to end in where they're at. They have nothing to lose. That's a soft spot for college. That may has not been a scandal yet, but I'd be worried about it. Just like you can find me talking about this gap where the NBA, the game time decision gap. I've talked about that over the years. This indictment surprised me in terms of Chauncey Billups being involved. It did not surprise me that this is the spot where gamblers could take advantage.
Great to talk to you. Have a good weekend. Thanks for taking time. Thank you, Wendy.
Take care.
That's Brian Windhorst, ESPN senior NBA writer. I remember being at the NBA Finals, and somebody had told me some information. And, yeah, I wasn't passing it on. I'm not a gambler, but it was valuable information to a gambler. And I didn't really think about it, and they probably didn't think about it either. But if you put that in the wrong hands, that's when you have situations like this. Because, and Brian brings up great things. Like Shefty's going to find out a lot of information, but he's got to be really careful in what he says with that information, because the amount of money that's bet, and you're talking about sometimes it's a half point. The over-under, point spread, injury, who's hurt, who might not play, who's not going to be 100, like just little things. And how many times do these games come down to, hey, USC Notre Dame, what was the point spread? 9.5. Notre Dame won by 10. And that's where people get misconstrued on, oh, it's fixed. No, that's Vegas doing its job. Vegas isn't fixing these games. Vegas is really good at telling you this is what's going to happen. And that was a classic example.
Isn't that so weird to you, though?
I know.
How are they that good at?
I know. But people are like, that's why it's fixed. 10-point spread, and they had it at 9.5. I give them credit. That's why I don't bet. I can't beat them.